The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, episode 113.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, or as Jimmy, you always say,
The Search for God, because we had the search for Spock, then we had the search for whales, now we have the search for God, then there'll be the search for peace.
So, as you can hear, joining me today is on the panel is Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy.
And Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
Well, I'm still waiting for the search for more money. Oh, wait, that's Spaceballs 2.
Yeah, that's right. That was the subtitle. So please, folks, if you can, as a reminder, please share the podcast with your friends to help us grow this community of listeners. We have a lot of fun here on The Secrets of Star Trek, even and especially when we're discussing the episodes and movies.
More painful.
The painful one.
Yeah.
You should hopefully enjoy our pain in this. So please share the podcast with your friends.
You know, it's talking about it, being so painful. It's so funny because the last time I saw this movie, I was maybe a teenager. And
yeah.
I didn't think it was that bad as a teenager until I rewatched it this weekend and went, oh, yeah.
This was, I think, the second time I've seen it. Certainly no more than the third, but I think only the second time. So I don't think I'd seen this since like the 1980s. And I did not like it then, and I did not like it now.
Yeah.
Now, according to my what I saw on the online streaming, it said it came out in 89, which actually I didn't realize it was that late that it came out. I thought it was closer to about 86, 87, but
well, in fact, they used some of the next gen sets in this to save money.
That's one thing that actually kind of impresses me about Hollywood, especially. But Star Trek, yeah, half the sets are all next gen sets or original motion picture sets that were then redressed for next gen, that were then redressed for this.
They recycle.
Well, like the bridge set. The bridge set is the same bridge set from the motion picture that then became the battle bridge that then became this bridge.
Actually, I read that the bridge set actually in this one was brand new. It was the one set they built from scratch.
I'm seeing two different stories because I've seen that, but I've also, according to both Memory Alpha and Ex Astri Scientia, this was the last time that bridge set was used because then it was destroyed in a storm as they were filming this movie. Oh,
wow. Maybe God was having something to say about this movie.
So the new set was the Enterprise, the 6 set, the movie number 6.
Well, it wasn't just sets that they were recycling; it was also plots because there's a recurring pattern that occurs in the original series of Star Trek where the Enterprise goes out and meets God, and for some reason God isn't as great as advertised. Either God is a machine or a crazy machine. And that just keeps happening. It's like one of Gene Roddenberry's author interest tropes.
Right.
And he then wanted to do basically this plot for Star Trek, the motion picture. And he wrote a treatment called The God Thing, and they were going to have a similar plot where they end up meeting God on the bridge of the Enterprise, and God explains that it's really an alien, maybe robot from an advanced civilization that every 2,000 years there's that number, makes contact with Earth, and He appears in different forms and even appears as Jesus Christ, and then God and Captain Kirk get into a fist fight on the Enterprise bridge. And Paramount told him he couldn't do that for some reason.
Gee, I wonder why.
And so they heavily modified it, and the God thing became V'ger for the motion picture. But it stuck in his craw that he didn't get to do that. And so then when William Shatner got to do the plot Gene Roddenberry had wanted to do, you know, Gene Roddenberry did exactly what you would expect. He threw a hissy fit and declared his opposition to this movie, and that either elements or all of it are apocryphal, which is like, sorry, Gene, you signed the paycheck, you signed the contract, you don't get to control canon anymore.
Right. Well, in fact, I read that Shatner had said one of his inspirations, at least for the character of Sybok, were the televangelists of the 80s, you know, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And so, which is one of the things that makes this movie feel kind of dated, because the televangelists was an 80s thing. I mean, there's still televangelists, but that the uproar over it and like the I don't know, it just makes it feel kind of dated.
I didn't get a televangelist vibe from Sybok in this. In fact, I think William Shatner just knew Roddenberry's plot. You know, but in fact, there's evidence that he did. But in fact, Sybok, I was really surprised by in this movie. So Sybok, for people who haven't seen the movie or seen it recently, is Spock's half-brother, and he's a Vulcan who does not do the whole logic thing. So he's what would in Enterprise be called Vatosh Katur, a Vulcan without logic. He's embraced the emotional side of things. He has no problem smiling and laughing and things like that. And he's on this quest. We don't know what it is at first, but it's some kind of semi-religious quest that becomes more explicitly religious as the movie goes on. And Sybok is likable.
Yeah.
He comes across as a genuinely sincere, likable guy. The actor playing him is a guy named Lawrence Luckinbill, who's not otherwise known for a lot of movie and TV work. He mainly does one-man plays about historical figures. It also turns out he's Catholic, and he's from Fort Smith, which is just right next to where I grew up.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
So he's from Fort Smith, Arkansas. But he comes across as a genuinely sincere, likable guy. His goals and objectives are different than Kirk in this movie, so they're at odds with each other for much of the movie. But he doesn't come across as a cackling bad guy. In fact, he seems genuinely nice and concerned about people, and he sacrifices himself at the end. So he's more likable. In fact, he comes across kind of as more likable than Kirk in some ways in this movie.
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. It's true.
But I have to give him credit for that, because it would be so easy, especially if they were taking inspiration from televangelists, to try to portray the deluded messianic figure as just a cackling villain or incredibly selfish and not really concerned about others and just a big phony. And they didn't.
Yeah, he's just deceived, basically. You know, actually, speaking of Lawrence Luckinbill, he's the son-in-law of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, who were Desilu Studios, which was the original creator of Star Trek. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
He's married to Lucy Arnaz.
Right. One thing that it's kind of interesting about, like you mentioned how Gene Roddenberry sort of writes this off as apocryphal. The book, the autobiography of James T. Kirk, that was a premium we were giving away, a benefit we were giving to patrons a while ago. It deals with this movie. The book kind of deals with all of Kirk's life and career. It deals with this movie by making it a movie made by the people which I forget what the episode with the gangsters, the 20s gangsters, the people who emulate
a piece of the action.
Yes, and they made a movie about Kirk and McCoy, and the Enterprise crew, and this was the movie they made.
Oh,
and so Kirk gets to see the movie, with Spock when they go back to that planet at some point, and they come out of the movie and they're like, "Wow, that was weird. I don't know what they were thinking." So I like the way they deal with it.
It's kind of like what they did with the Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies in Stephen Moffat's 50th anniversary novel, where they canonized those or brought those into canon as movies within the Doctor Who universe.
Right. That's pretty much the only way you can really deal with it. So one of the things I thought was interesting also is it feels a little bit, we talk about recycling of things. Some of the plot feels a bit of a recycling of Wrath of Khan. You have a desolate planet, a charismatic leader, his ragtag army, mind control, some Starfleet officers help him take over the Enterprise in order to carry out his mission. I mean, I felt like they said, well, what made Wrath of Khan so popular? Let's sort of bring that back because the fans will like that. It just felt a bit of we've been here before in this, at least in the first half of this movie.
They also apparently wanted the humor factor from Star Trek IV, the immediately preceding film that had knocked it out of the park. And so apparently there was a mandate from the studio to make this funny, like Search for Whales. And they tried.
And failed in many places.
Wow, did the jokes land flat one after another?
Oh yes.
The camping scene where they're out there around the fire pit just was painful, and it was supposed to be hilarious.
Let's get into the plot as such as it is as we go. We start on Nimbus 3, the planet of galactic peace, which is clearly an ironic name for this planet. It's in a neutral zone. I'm not sure which one. We have two neutral zones in Star Trek, so the Romulan and the Klingon, but we have the neutral zone. So there's a.
I assume it's kind of at the intersection of the two.
Well, that's possible.
And of course, now the Picard novel cleared that up, that it was Romulan.
Yeah, it's in the Picard novel.
Yes, right. Thank you. So it's apparently a failed experiment in which the Federation, the Klingons, and the Romulans were supposed to cooperate in developing a planet together. It ends up they gathered together the dregs of the galaxy to settle it because that's the only people who would bother to come to this desolate place. And they had to ban all weapons. So what happens when you ban all weapons? People make new weapons that they can use.
They just get their 3D printer and start cranking them out.
Yes, or air pressure that shoots pebbles at each other, which against phasers does not seem all that effective.
Basically airsoft.
That's right. So out of the dust storm, a rider on a pale horse appears.
It's actually a blue horse with a little horn.
Oh, that's right. Which I guess Shatner wanted to be a unicorn, but the studio said no unicorns.
Well, it is a unicorn. It's just got a really short horn.
Yes, it doesn't. Not the classic unicorn. Sybok is the riding the horse. He looks at this guy, this actor who's always plays like aliens and other like weird guys out there because he's kind of got a very interesting look to him.
He's funny looking, and to make him an alien, because I thought he's a human at first.
Yeah.
But no, he's got a prosthetic mouthpiece where inside his mouth. So when he opens his mouth, you see he's got these enormous gums and very small weird teeth at the bottom of the gums. So instead of being a forehead effect or an ear effect or a nose effect, he's got a gum effect. So his dentist is probably pleased, I guess.
Yes. At least it's something different. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
So Sybok looks at this guy who's digging holes in the desert and tells him, your pain runs deep, and offers to explore it with him and expose it and share it. And the guy responds, his name is John, which is not, it's J apostrophe ONN, because
like the Martian Manhunter, John Jones.
Exactly. Yep. He says, as if a weight has been lifted from my heart. How can I repay you from this miracle? Join my quest. And then he says, what is it you seek? And Sybok says, I seek the Holy Grail. Wrong movie. He literally says, what is it you seek? And he like this, and they get right to that point. He says he seeks ultimate knowledge instead of the Holy Grail.
Well, first he says, I seek what we all seek. It's like, oh, okay, well then I don't have much choice, do I? Already on that.
Yes, I'm already there. But Sybok says he needs a starship, and so he's going to contrive to bring one to the planet. Although I'm curious how he got to this planet. Like, what's he doing?
Yeah, I mean, I know. Why did he's got here somehow?
Yes.
So why didn't he just do his share your pain thing with the crew of that ship and already be on his way?
Right. And I don't think the new movie never explains how does this sharing your pain and exploring your pain result in the person. It's apparently not brainwashing. They just decide to throw out all of their ethics, all of their previous loyalties,
become traitors and mutineers and all that good stuff.
Yeah, this film is inconsistent on this, and I think that you have to say, despite Sybok's claims, merely freeing people of pain. I mean, this is like giving them an antidepressant, anti-anxiety drug.
Right.
That's not going to change their values or life goals. So I think there has to be some kind of telepathic manipulation beyond that.
Right.
That is brainwashing them, even if Sybok doesn't realize it or can't admit it to himself.
Right. That has to be. So we switch from here to Yosemite National Park, El Capitan, the giant geological feature. It's not really a mountain, but
El Capitan.
Did I say it incorrectly? I think I said it the Apple way.
It.
Yeah. Oh, I said El Capitan, which is apparently there's that debate over how do you actually say it that was raging.
Oh, well, tomato. All I know is in the 23rd century, free climbing El Capitan should be illegal unless you're wearing a jet belt.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're to believe that Kirk, at his age, which he's not a young man at this point, as we've seen in a couple previous movies, is free climbing El Capitan. Like that, I have a hard time believing that. I get that Shatner wants us to believe that he could do it, but so I saw this interview with Shatner about this, like this video interview on YouTube, where he said the climber climbs the mountain because he tells Spock, "I'm climbing it because it's there," but Shatner says the climber climbs the mountain not just because it's there, but because he wants to hug it, envelop it, make love to it. I'm like,
ew,
wow,
like Shatner, easy boy. I mean, could it, like, even the interviews about this movie are weird.
Although, to be fair, Shatner has come clean and admitted repeatedly that this movie was not as well done as he had hoped. So it's not like he's in denial about the problems about the movie. He's admitted them. But for all I know, it may be, this is the face he is climbing is so dangerous.
Yeah.
That I don't know if you'd be allowed to climb it today. But certainly by the 23rd century, when you have teleport buttons and jet belts and jet boots, as we're about to see, there's no way they would allow people to do something as dangerous as climb this without some kind of protection.
Yeah,
or
you think they'd have like
transport?
Well, emergency transport or anti-grav belt or you said like the jet boots or something like that. Although jet boots, they look pretty clunky. They look like ski boots, basically.
Yes. Or like a force field that catches you. It wasn't the movie Free Solo about someone free climbing El Capitan, I think? I don't know. There was a movie, I didn't see it, about someone free climbing something. Well, so what's interesting is the shots of Spock talking to Kirk while he's climbing in Yosemite were actually filmed on a set in a parking lot in an overlook. And you can see El Capitan behind them. Like the actual face of El Capitan, like in the distance. It's like, you're kind of ruining the illusion here.
Yeah.
But
I'm surprised they went that far instead of doing it like, I don't know, in a studio and just had a picture of Yosemite in the background.
I know, a matte picture. The stuntman who did the free fall, his name's Kenny Bates. He's credited with the highest descender fall. So he obviously had a cable on him, which you can see in the shot. He has the credit with the highest descender fall in the United States. So
wow,
that's good luck to you there. Don't break that record.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Dr. McCoy is watching through Luke Skywalker's binoculars.
Yes.
And is a nervous wreck and confesses as much to himself.
Yes.
And it is, pretty dramatic watching Kirk do this incredibly stupid thing. And then to watch Spock do the even more stupid thing of going up and trying to talk him out of a climb while he's in the middle of a climb and is hundreds of feet above the ground. And McCoy straight up, and the writers thus, hang a lantern on it by talking about how irresponsible it is for Spock to be talking to Kirk at this moment. And even Kirk gets in on the action, talking about how Spock is distracting him.
Right.
And then we have the inevitable fall, and Spock uses his jet boots to zoom down and grab Kirk as Kirk is inches above,
of course,
the ground. And grabs his leg to keep him from slamming into the ground. And comic book physics apparently apply.
Right.
Because if Kirk had really fallen hundreds of feet, maybe 1,000 or more feet, and then Spock grabbed his leg inches above the ground, he would have ripped his leg out of its socket.
Yeah.
yes, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. Well, speaking of comedy, by the way, I did think the line, McCoy's line, where he says, "If I'm not careful, I'll end up talking to myself." I thought that was kind of funny because he's talking to himself. The special effects, by the way, were terrible in this.
Yes.
Like that scene, like
in
Kirk
that
falling.
scene, yes.
Yeah. Apparently, ILM was not available to do the movie, and so they got some second-rate fly-by-night outfit who didn't have enough time.
The special effects throughout were pretty bad. At least the on-planet stuff. Obviously, the spaceship effects were incredible, but
they recycle those from.
There's places like the shuttle looks like a model flying in front of a green screen.
Right.
This film has a reputation for bad special effects, and at least when it comes to the space ones, I didn't think they were bad. Now, I agree, like when Kirk's falling off the mountain, it's terrible. You can tell it's a green screen. But other than that, once we're in space, the space effects to me aren't bad. Not for the time. I mean, they're not modern, but for the time, they're not bad. With one exception, there is a moon that we see that apparently has a quantum orbit because it leaps from one moment to the next in its orbit without smooth transitions between them.
Well, to kind of extend that, a lot of the space effects of the Enterprise in space are recycled ILM effects from previous movies, so that's why
it doesn't surprise me.
But there are other things like the galactic barrier effects and the blue planet at the end that is all weird looking and stuff.
No, I agree that the space stuff looked good. It was just when they were in atmosphere,
right?
Whether it is him falling or space or the shuttles in atmosphere, just looked terrible.
Yeah. So back to Nimbus 3, where we are taken down to Paradise City, where the grass is green and the girls are pretty. Thank you, Guns N' Roses. We find David Warner playing St. John Talbot.
This is Star Trek, where the grass should be pretty and the girls should be green.
That's right. That's right. So we have David Warner, a great actor in a very small role, playing St. John Talbot. He's the Federation representative there. Caitlin Dar is the very un-Romulan ambassador, and Cord is very stereotypical Klingon. Who he does a great job, actually.
It's interesting. They're both. So Cord is Klingon, and he is stereotypical in some ways, but he's also different in others. I mean, he's enormous for one thing. He's obese, and he's at this point in his development, he's a drunk. I mean, he doesn't. He's all he does he doesn't even get a line for a long time. I didn't know if they were going to play him as an entirely mute character. All he's interested in is drinking.
Right.
And David Warner's character, St. John something or other, St. John something or other, Talbot.
Yeah.
Is when we meet him, he's smoking a cigarette, which is unusual for Star Trek, especially, So here we've got the smoker and the drinker, and they're have been beaten down by living on Nimbus 3. And then here comes the perky new Romulan lady who's not been jaded yet, and she's like, well, I guess I got here just in time.
This was going to be a new sitcom Star Trek series featuring these three. So Cybok's religious sect attacks the city and takes the three diplomats prisoners. So there's a big extended action sequence that there's nothing really much happens besides that. Then we cut to the Enterprise, where Scotty is complaining about the new Enterprise and how she's all in pieces and
been put together by monkeys.
A group of monkeys, which is good. Apparently, he and Uhura are in a relationship. They talk about trying to go on a date.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
Were they explicit about that? I mean, I didn't get that. I thought they were just hinting, because she like brings them dinner, which looks like 2 unpainted, bags of chips.
Yeah.
Well, they were supposed to go on leave together, so
they're supposed to go on leave together, and she's doing a lot of touching of the face of his face.
Yeah. And then what happens later in the sick bay?
Yeah, but at this point, I didn't get that they were actually in a relationship.
Yeah,
which would actually take the edge off of what happens later if they're already in a relationship.
Right. Then they get red alert in space dock, and the screen above the communications panel says "Good morning, Captain," which is a reference to
Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah, they sort of recycling that idea of how can you have a red alert in space dock? Well, apparently they have them more often now. Then we have Sulu and Chekhov lost in the woods, which is great because they're the helmsman and the navigator lost in the woods in the 24th century, where we have GPS. So I don't know what they've decided not to carry.
Yeah, the communicators does have their little GPS Google Maps.
So they're recalled to the ship, and they try to play it off like, don't let them know that we're lost. We'll never live it down. But of course, Uhura figures it out.
Another reason why you need to be able to take communicators off speakerphone.
Right. Chekhov tries to pretend there's a blizzard, and she's like, I can look right now and see that it's bright and sunny there and warm. Then we have Kirk, McCoy, and Spock doing their camping thing at night because it's nighttime now. They haven't been picked up because they didn't take their communicators with them on their leave, which seems like a violation.
Which by the way,
regs.
is a hint for today. When you go on vacation, just leave your cell phone in the car or at home.
Right. McCoy's still mad at Kirk for risking his life, but Kirk says he knew he wouldn't die because he knows he will die alone. So that's a reference to later on, by the way. And in fact, Star Trek Generations have that too. Spock pulls out his unitasker that apparently makes marshmallows. This was, by the way, he calls them marshmallows. This was apparently originally a flub by Leonard Nimoy. He said melons instead of marshmallows. But they ended up incorporating it into the script and referring to it several times.
There's even a explanation of it in the novel.
Yes.
Where Kirk and Spock have reprogrammed the library computer to display marshmallows instead of marshmallows. So when Spock looked up appropriate camping behavior, he would be fed false data.
Yeah, something like McCoy paying a technician to alter the database. It was because he knew that Spock would look up camping in the database to learn about it.
Funny thing too about that little marshmallow dispenser is you could actually get one in the 80s when this movie came out. Jiffy, one of the marshmallow companies, Jiffy Puff or whatever ones there are. They actually Kraft created one of these where you'd load it up with marshmallows and hit a button and it would pop out.
Nice. Talk about a unitasker. So they have a row your boat sing along, which Spock doesn't do very well,
or at all at this point.
Yes. Then we cut to space where we have the Pioneer 10 space probe.
Oh no! Before that, we have the Walton scene where after they've had the aborted sing along.
Yes, they go to bed.
They go to bed, and we have this laborious saying of goodnight to each other individually, which is meant to parody the ending of episodes of the Waltons. But it drags. It just really drags. And today, most people won't even know what the Waltons were. The Waltons was a family show about a family of kind of poor mountain people who lived this country lifestyle in the early 1900s. And because of the family atmosphere, the episodes would close at night with the lights in the house. We'd see the house from the outside. The lights would be going off, and they would be saying goodnight to each other. And "Goodnight, John Boy" was like one of the classic lines. It was endlessly parodied back in the 70s. Yeah. And so here at the end of the 80s, they're doing a Waltons parody. And wow, does it drag. And this is the moment where I noted for myself, because I knew this was going to be a difficult movie, but I wanted to give it a chance. And so I said, I'm going to pretend I don't know anything about this movie. I'm going to try to pretend I don't know we're heading to the God thing. I'm not going to judge it by modern standards. I'm going to try to just take it as it is and then see how long it takes before I start noticing this is markedly inferior. And
it was this long.
Well, I already had notes about things I didn't like, but that doesn't mean markedly inferior. It just means thing I didn't like.
Right.
But by the time we got to the Walton's Goodnight parody, it's like, okay, this is starting to drag. This is markedly inferior.
I will say, though, I did like, at the last line of it was Kirk saying, Spock says, "Good night, Jim." And Kirk goes, "We will see." Or, we will see, It's just kind of like, yeah, that's everybody else's reaction about this point. This is going to be a good night watching this movie, right? We'll see.
So after that is when we get to seeing the Pioneer 10 space probe in space being destroyed by a Klingon bird of prey. So a couple hundred years from now, the Pioneer 10 would probably be just outside the solar system,
which is where it is now, just outside.
Are hanging around us. Like, they keep doing this with space, like Earth space probes, like pretending that they will have traveled hundreds of light years away or dozens of light years away in just a few hundred years. Like, stop doing that, Star Trek.
Well, at least when they did it in the Frozen People episode of Next Gen, they hung a lantern on the anomaly and said, "How did it get out here?"
Right.
Here, the MST3K mantra applies. It's just a show. I should really just relax. They're doing it for the sake of a joke.
Yeah,
by showing us they show us the familiar man-woman record image from Pioneer 10 that Carl Sagan helped design, and then they show us the Klingons blowing it up. And so this message of interstellar peace and goodwill is getting blown up by Klingons. Ha ha, isn't that funny? So it's here for the sake of a joke. So one shouldn't worry about, even though I did, of course, how did it get this far out? The problem, though, once I set that aside, because it's just for a joke, once I set that aside, I have to say, is this a good joke? No, not in this context. It might be in some other context, but here, after the Waltons parody, oh, great, they're destroying Pioneer 10.
Right.
And to be honest, how many people even know that it is Pioneer 10, even in the late 80s?
Well, it said it has an on-screen thing that says Pioneer 10, but yeah, does even people know what Pioneer 10 is?
Because I don't even remember, when was Pioneer 10 launched?
In the 70s.
In the 70s. It was, and for people who may not be fans of this stuff, Pioneer 10 was a space probe that was the first space probe to get close-up pictures of Jupiter and confirm some but not all of Ingo Swann's remote viewing predictions about Jupiter.
Then you'll have to listen to Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World to find out who Ingo Swann is. So these Klingons, by the way, are a hapless bunch. I mean, they're kind of a joke. They're not even supposed to be elite. I mean, even in the movie, they're not supposed to be this elite bunch. They're just sort of this piratical crew who wandering around looking for something to be warriors against or something. And they don't really get much to do in this episode. They kind of just foils at a couple points.
Get to use the Klingon periscope.
Yes. The only time we ever see the Klingon periscope for shooting, because we're supposed to clearly get the sense of a submarine out of this.
And these are the really stereotypical Klingons. I mean, they're out here in space. They're up to no good. They're militaristic. They destroy stuff for fun. They talk to each other with the thick guttural, language and everything. And there's, and they look like stereotypical Klingons. The makeup is not horrible, but there's this one woman who, I don't know, they got like a bodybuilder lady. I think the character's name is Rix or something like that.
Vixis.
Vixis, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I knew there were X's in it. And she must be a stomach sleeper, because on the back of her head, her hair comes out in this straight projection that goes back like 18 inches. There's no way you could roll on your back wearing that on your head, and it's too complex to take apart every night. Right. So she must be someone who normally sleeps on her stomach and maybe occasionally flips onto one side or the other.
So yes, they find out about the hostages on Nimbus 3, and that there's a Federation starship being dispatched. And so the Captain Claw says, "I've always wanted to fight a Federation starship." So they're now on their way there. Uhura, meanwhile, because she can't get a hold of Kirk on the phone, takes a shuttle down to Yosemite to pick them up.
And of course, you have to have the ET lights, where all you see is the bright light coming down from the sky.
Right. In the back aboard the Galileo 5, what's the name of the shuttle? They see the Enterprise from far off as they're approaching it in orbit, and we have the quote from "All I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by." And McCoy gets it wrong
out of nowhere. For what reason? How is that relevant to this context? And we've heard it before.
Right. It's to show Kirk as the consummate, ship captain, but also to set up the joke, which is McCoy thinks it's Melville, and Spock corrects him as being John Masefield, and then saying, "I'm well versed in the classics, Doctor. Then how come you don't know row your boat?" Which, so getting that joke.
Well, let's be honest here too. Kirk said that every time he approached the ship from a shuttle.
Right.
That was just like his lucky charm. No, I'm just kidding.
Could be. There also, we should mention, so they're being sent on this hostage rescue mission to Nimbus 3, and they're in orbit around Earth.
Yes.
And Nimbus 3 is in the neutral zone.
Right.
So it's like a long way away. And the standard explanation for why the Enterprise needs to do something is there's nobody closer.
Yes.
But the writers seem to realize that's not entirely going to fly when you've got the distance between Earth and the neutral zone. I mean, there's got to be people in Federation starships in that area. And so they vary the normal excuse a little bit, and they say it's because, we've got other people out there, but no experienced captains. So that's why we need Captain Kirk. And I'm like, okay, that's nonsense. There are going to be experienced captains.
Right.
And even a less experienced captain is going to be better than an experienced captain in a starship that is falling apart and in desperate need of repair and doesn't even have transporters. That's why they had to send shuttles, was because the transporters are down, and the transporters on the Enterprise will remain down with one exception for the entire movie.
Right.
Yep.
And it's, as far as I know, a straightforward hostage rescue. I mean, you don't need like Jim Kirk for that.
No, you need a teenager with a transporter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's just the premise is incredibly flawed. So they talked to this Starfleet admiral. It's actually Harve Bennett, who was he the producer of the earlier movies? He didn't want to do this one, and Shatner convinced him to stick around. Harve Bennett will never do anything Star Trek ever again after this. But he's the admiral on the screen. The yeoman on the bridge who takes Kirk's coat is actually Shatner's daughter, Melanie. She spends the rest of the scene, literally they set this up as a joke, a background joke. She spends the rest of the time wandering around the bridge carrying his coat because there's no place to put it. They literally put this into the movie. So I thought like the technology keeps failing. Even like Kirk tries to do his log in this little tablet sort of thing, but it's not really a tablet, which has a big light up button that says system failure. Like, so it breaks often enough that you have a dedicated giant light on it that says system failure.
Yeah.
But like it fails by popping things out of it. It's just overdone. Like fine, the ship is, having troubles, but don't it just.
You would think stuff like that would still be, operating as normal, because that's not a part of the ship. That's just a device you bring on the ship.
So it's the technology breakdowns are done for comedy, not for dramatic purpose, which is what my problem is.
Yeah.
So the hostages on Nimbus 3 are revealing that they've actually surrendered to the forces of the Galactic Army of Light. That's how they're characterizing Cybok's group.
And Kirk learns that one of them is Klingon General Cord, and of course, here it comes. His military tactics were required reading when I was at the academy.
Like, there is so much required reading at the academy. It is one of the biggest tropes in all of Star Trek, is how every time they meet someone, they're required reading at the academy. I think the best part of the movie is this Enterprise's version of 10 Forward, the officers' lounge with the big ship's wheel. That's my favorite part of the whole movie.
It's not very big, but it looks nice. Yes,
it is a very nice place to have a Romulan ale and a cigar. So Spock recognizes Cybok on the screen, but doesn't say who he really is at first.
Oh, and this is like those This is like those Sherlock Holmes stories where if only the person had revealed the appropriate information at the appropriate time, it would have gone so much smoother.
Yes.
It's like Spock does not recognizes Sybok on the screen of the bridge, but doesn't tell who he is. And then they have a sidebar with him in the lounge where it's like, okay, he reminds me of this Vulcan I knew who rejected logic and was a revolutionary, but not, and he's my brother.
Right.
Right.
Or even his name is Sybok.
Right. It's so very strange. Just like, it doesn't make any sense why he wouldn't say anything. There's no logic, shall we say?
Even in the case of the brother thing, I could be semi-forgiving of that because they have established Vulcans are extremely private about some things. So I could see Spock saying it's not relevant that he's my brother, so I'm not going to share that part. But humans like to know the names of things.
Yes.
So he should at least say he reminds me of this guy Sybok.
Right. And then they could look up his information about him or whatever.
Yeah.
So they get the Nimbus 3, the transporters are down, like you said, and also they detect the Klingon bird of prey approaching. So we now have a ticking clock here that we have to deal with. And so they take shuttles down. We have actual Starfleet Marines in the shuttle. This was established as these are real Marines.
Apparently part of the Enterprise skeleton crew that they have on this post-shakedown mission.
Yep. Chekhov on the communicator poses as the ship's captain in order to distract Sybok.
Yeah, now here comes the first of several related things. So one of the problems with doing these movies was they needed to get all the cast on board.
Yes.
But not all the cast are the featured players. The featured players are like Kirk and Spock and maybe McCoy.
Right.
But the other cast members, it's like, why do I want to do this? Just to sit at the console and punch a couple of buttons and have a couple of lines. So they need to find moments for the other actors to, quote unquote, shine. And they did that pretty successfully in Search for Whales, where like Chekhov gets this mission and Sulu has this mission and Scotty and McCoy go off on this mission. And so they broke it all up and gave everybody something to do. And they're trying to do that here. And so over the next sequence of the movie, we're going to see the shine moments for all of the secondary players. And the first one we've had already, in fact, in Search for Whales, we had Chekhov, rank Admiral. And so, of course, we're going to play on Chekhov's ambition again, and he gets to pretend to be the captain.
Yes.
And so that's his moment to shine.
And then we get Uhura's moment to shine.
Okay, but in the moonlight.
So during pre-production meetings, the screenwriter David Lowery jokingly proposed to have Commander Uhura appear as a fan dancer of some sort in minimal clothing in order to lure away the... What's that?
Like Lola Falana.
Yes.
If I'm remembering her name correctly.
In order to lure away the hostage takers from the Paradise City compound. And was surprised when the producers approved of the idea right away. We love this idea. Put it in the movie. He's like, I was joking. So we have this embarrassing scene of poor Nichelle Nichols having to do this, dancing in the moonlight.
But she is a singer, and she likes singing. She sang on the original series a number of times. That's one of her things. Yeah, I think Nichelle Nichols was into this.
Well, and she would dance. Uhura would dance around as she's singing. In the original series, so not seductively like this, but she would still a little bit,
and unclothed.
She was flirting with Charlie X and Mr. Spock.
Well, yes, yeah. But here, I felt like if you're coming up with a plan to distract them, this is a kind of a weird one. This is
really weird.
Who comes up with this? Okay. Kirk turns to Uhura. Okay, first, take off all your clothes.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to call Starfleet HR at this point and file a complaint.
Where do the feathered fans come from?
Right.
Where did Uhura come from? She was not established as being on the shuttle with the Space Marines.
That's right. Was she flying it again? I don't know. Yeah.
No, Sulu was flying it. Sulu
That's right.
Tapped Kirk tapped George Takei for his moment to shine and had him come with.
That's right. So anyway, they distract these guys with Uhura so they can steal their horses to get to the compound faster.
I have to say that from my one time seeing this, the two things I remembered from this are the final confrontation with the entity pretending to be God.
Yep.
And Uhura's fan dance.
Yeah.
I didn't remember the context. I didn't remember why Uhura was doing the fan dance, but I remembered Uhura does a fan dance in the moonlight.
Yes, as a teenage boy, that made an impression.
Yeah.
On me, anyway. So the away team attacks the settlement, and the two notable things happen. Spock neck pinches a horse.
Oh, no. This isn't next gen. The landing party attacks the settlement.
That's right. Sorry, I've got my terminology.
Nomenclature,
yes.
Anachronistic.
Yes. So Spock neck pinches a horse, and Kirk fights a Catwoman, and drowns her in an inch of water with apparently no concern for her life.
Well, I don't know that she drowns, but he does throw her into a pool table where in a gaming establishment where they have been playing pool with pool balls, like the knock it into the corner pocket, like billiards,
yep.
But it's water. So it's like water pool. And I don't know how conscious the pool pun here is, that it's a pool of water where you play pool.
I don't know if they kill her, but they leave her face down in the water. So
she doesn't move after that. So, and there's no sign afterwards. So who knows?
A little cold-blooded there. Anyway, the hostages turn out to have Stockholm syndrome, and they've joined the conspirators. The tables are turned. The Enterprise crew is taken captive.
And we learn Sybok's name at this point, but not that he's Spock's brother.
Right. But he does ask Spock to join him and in stealing the ship and fulfilling whatever his mission is that he has not yet revealed either. Then we have this drama of the bird of prey approaching the Enterprise, and they have to sneak the shuttle onto the Enterprise quick enough before the bird of prey arrives, but the shields are up, and so they're going to have to crash land the shuttle into the shuttle bay.
So this is George Takei's moment to shine, do this fancy landing.
Which is, as they say, any landing you walk away from is a good landing. So that's about all you can say about this. They end up walking away from it. They left all of Sybok's people on the surface. So
most of them.
Do they end up bringing them up later, or do we leave without them?
We leave without them because of the Klingon attack.
Right.
They were planning to bring more up, but it ended up being only a few of them, including the ambassadors.
Right.
But then, after the crash landing on the shuttle bay, Kirk and Sybok wake up before anybody else, and they get into a fight and end up outside the shuttle. And Sybok apparently is not a pacifist, because he grabs a gun and is going to shoot Kirk with it, or at least threaten Kirk with it. And he's, by the way, been saying things like, bloodshed is not my intention, I don't want violence and stuff, but he's willing to use it. And Kirk causes him to drop the gun, and then we see this weird boot step into frame that Kirk says, pick it up, and Mr. Spock picks up the gun and points it right at Sybok's chest, and Kirk is yelling, shoot him. And I'm going, I don't think the Starfleet Judge Advocate General's office is going to look favorably on shoot him in the chest when he is not armed and not apparently a threat at this moment. But instead of saying, Captain, I can't shoot him because he's unarmed and not a threat at the moment, Spock just refuses to shoot him and later justifies it and even hands the gun to him.
Right.
And later justifies it on the grounds of he's my brother. So, okay, I don't think the Judge Advocate General is going to support that legal theory either, and especially not handing him the gun. I think both Kirk and Spock have opened themselves up to very serious charges if the JAG wants to prosecute.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, there might have been some justification for shooting if the other of Sybok's fellows were also armed, and they are already clearly not hijacked pirates trying to take over the ship in that sense. So there might be justification, but
once somebody's not a threat, rules of engagement should not allow you. We have a Ruby Ridge episode coming up on Mysterious World where we're going to talk about rules of engagement.
That's right.
But wow, Kirk is overly bloodthirsty and Spock is overly sentimental. You don't need to go to the "he's my brother" to justify not shooting him.
And there's still the risk to the ship because they're there for the whole purpose of taking over the ship. You should at least do something to make sure they can't do that.
You're right. Do something, Spock, to prevent it. Because what happens is they bring McCoy under restraint out of the shuttle, and that's what ends up being the thing that makes Spock give up, because they've got McCoy threatened violence on him, so they've lost the bit here, and they end up putting Spock and McCoy and Kirk in the brig, where they are. Spock is revealed, that finally reveals Spock is his half brother. McCoy is the voice of reason between Kirk and Spock here. Like Kirk and Spock are both unreasonable here, and McCoy's the one's like, hey, look, straighten up. Just Spock can't kill his own brother. And, so on and so forth. We got bigger problems to deal with.
Actually, I think Spock should not have a problem killing his brother if it's justified. I mean,
right.
he's the Mr. Logical.
This is true.
But I did think some of the humor in that scene kind of landed.
Mm-hmm.
Where Spock is saying, he's my brother, and Kirk is like, oh, I know he's a fellow Vulcan. No, I mean, he's my brother. Spock, you don't have a brother. Technically, you were correct. See, I told you. I have a half brother.
And that's what Kirk says.
That worked.
Yeah, Kirk says, I got to sit down. So he opens up the seat to sit down. So Sybok, meanwhile, on the hangar in the shuttle bay, he starts doing the release your pain thing to Uhura and Sulu. So he's turning them. Then he tells the crew about his plans to go to Shakari.
Yeah, and he's apparently converted the entire crew. I mean, I know it's a skeleton crew, but did he really go and do this share your pain thing to dozens of people and we didn't see it? I mean, how did they arrange the logistics of that? Did he wander around the ship doing it to people, or did they force the people to come to him in a line, or we need more, because all of a sudden everybody's going along with him.
Right.
They had an all hands meeting at the rec hall and everybody showed up and
Yeah, but they missed Mr. Scott.
Yes, yep. He's running about on his own. And so they're going to go to Shakari. It's beyond the Great Barrier at the center of the galaxy, which is apparently different from the Great Barrier at the edge of the galaxy. No ship has ever survived crossing the Great Barrier.
No probe has ever come back from it.
Yeah, except that this tumble-down Enterprise and an old bird of prey are going to do it. No problem.
Yeah.
With no explanation for how.
Yes.
Other than a suggestion that it's because we've conquered fear.
Yeah. Right. So Scotty comes along and engineers a jailbreak. He blasts open the wall, warning them with Morse code.
Yeah, we should say that that Shakare is, so it's this planet that apparently is in mythologies all over the galaxy as the point of origin for life.
Yep. It's Eden.
Yes.
So it's Eden, or, it's this perfect place where you might find God. And also because they wanted the Sybok part to originally be played by Sean Connery, who was unavailable because of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the planet Shakare is named after Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. Yes.
I just thought they just wanted to hear him say that.
Yeah. Also, it's at the center of the galaxy. So that's 25,000 light years away from Earth, where the movie started. Wow, Voyager would love to have had a drive capable of getting 25,000 light years in a day.
They would have been home in time for the weekend. I mean,
I know. Yeah, they would have been home in 3 days if they had that drive.
Apparently, it's not full of black holes like we all hear about today, but this one planet. So we have Scotty engineering the jailbreak, and they're walking around through these big corridors, which are apparently the back lot of the Enterprise, and he has to direct Kirk to where to go to get to the turbolift shaft to climb up to where they need to go. And he's, oh, Scotty, you're a miracle worker. You know this. You know your way around. Oh, I know the ship like the back of my hand. He turns the corner and clonks his head, and it gets knocked out. And I think a lot of fans, they play it for laughs. Like, oh, Scotty, he knows the ship like in the back of his hand and hits his head. And a lot of fans didn't like this, what they did to Scotty here, playing that off for laughs. Like, no, Scotty is really good. Like, Like, we don't want to play off Scotty as a sort of a dope. I mean,
I don't mind. I didn't think the joke was funny. I thought it was too obvious, but
yeah.
But I didn't mind. I mean, after all, this is a brand new ship that was put together by monkeys.
That's right. That's right. Which monkey left that thing hanging low there where I could hit my head on it? So, of course, they have to do a high climb to remind us of El Capitan. And Spock will, of course, have to show up with grav boots.
And then they drink Willy Wonka's fizzy lifting drinks and zoom up to the top of the shaft dangerously.
So, the numbers go the wrong way. Yep. The numbers are rising as they ascend. No, the deck number 1 is the bridge, and then you go down from there. That's always been established. 2, apparently this ship has like 80 decks. Like this ship is gigantic. Like, I mean, it's crazy. And why does Spock show up with the grav boots from above? If he went, like, that means he apparently went up some other turbo lift and then came down. Why couldn't they have just taken whatever route Spock went in the first place? Like, it's full of plot holes.
Yep.
Then we have Scotty and Uhura's uncomfortable encounter in sickbay, as I labeled it.
So this is interesting. So Uhura has been liberated by Sybok, and Scotty has not. And so as soon as he wakes up, it's like, I've got to get back on the transporters. That's what the last order I had from the captain. And Uhura is like, oh, wait a minute. Hey, you want to hear Sybok out and so forth. And she's genuinely concerned for him, because he has just had a head injury, even though they've cleaned him up. And she's also putting the moves on him.
Yep.
I mean, she's talking about how now that we've been liberated by Sybok, he's put us in touch with feelings we couldn't express before. And so I think she was like bringing the unpainted silver bags of potato chips to Scotty earlier as dinner was like her hinting at a relationship, but now she's acting on her feelings. It's like making a more pronounced move. And Scotty is receptive, but says, not now, dear. I have to fix the transporters. And also hints that he's not physically up for it right now in view of his recent injury.
Right. In my present condition or yours. So he's being very gentlemanly there, not taking advantage of her.
Yeah.
So Kirk and Spock and McCoy got to that forward observation lounge, and that's where the emergency radio is, apparently.
It's a lot smaller than 10 forward. It's maybe like 3 forward or something.
Yes. It's like a living room size, a nice den. So they apparently get a hold of Starfleet Command. It turns out it's really the Klingon woman Vixis, and so they know where they're going to 000 Mark II, which is apparently the center of the galaxy. And so then that's when Sybok shows up, and they have this conversation. Sybok says he doesn't control minds. They have that whole thing. And so now he's going to do the thing to each of these 3 guys. And he starts with McCoy. And now here's the controversial bit in this episode, which is...
One of them.
One of them. McCoy's pain is apparently that he killed his father in an episode.
As euthanasia, to put him out of his suffering.
Right, and has to relive the moment. And what makes it even more painful is they found a cure for whatever was ailing his father like a week later. And in one sense, I'm like, yeah, that's actually a pretty good argument against euthanasia, isn't it?
Also, the don't kill innocent people is another good argument.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't see it as euthanasia because they talk about how the machines are basically keeping him alive at this point, his dad alive at that point. So, of course, there's the argument of whether or not you're required to maintain life-sustaining devices beyond the point where your body can sustain itself anyways, And so I didn't see it as euthanasia. I saw it as he was turning off the machines, basically, pulling the plug, to use kind of colloquial term.
That didn't occur to me at the time. I think they wanted us to read it emotionally as euthanasia, but you're right. They did have a line in there about the machines are keeping him alive. And in that case, turning off the machines when someone's in incredible pain is not euthanasia. It's just not taking heroic measures.
Because you're not required. Yeah, you're not required to do extraordinary measures of any kind. I mean, whether it's a surgery or keeping the machines running indefinitely. You're not required to do that to keep life. Now, you are required to, do the ordinary measures like food and water, and that's been arguments, in moral issues. But I saw this scene as the pain of he made the decision to pull the plug And then, a couple of months later, he could have been cured.
Right.
And that was his pain. That's at least that's how I saw that scene, because of Sybok's line about, well, the machines will keep him running indefinitely.
Right.
I thought it was pretty well played as a scene, actually. And the way they visualized it, it was also interesting, because even though they're standing here on the 10 forward equivalent, the lounge on the Enterprise, it's like suddenly the hospital room appears behind McCoy. And we have this hybrid set between the lounge and the hospital room.
Right.
I thought it flowed very naturally. I thought it was emotionally affecting. I was distracted by the fact that they don't have morphine, apparently, in the 23rd century. It's apparently a lost medicine.
Right.
It's like we don't know how to make Greek fire. They apparently don't know how to make morphine. Also, I thought it was interesting, McCoy's father does not have a Southern accent, which only goes to show a truth from linguistics, which is your kids pick up their accents from their friends, not their parents. So apparently, McCoy's father moved to the South, even though he was not a Southerner, and McCoy picked up the Southern accents from his little playmates in the early 23rd century.
There you go. The one thing that kind of distracted me is that it looked like, they don't actually say it, but it looks like Kirk and Spock are seeing what McCoy
they are.
sees.
Actually, they do they do after this. In the next one, when they're looking at Spock, Kirk says, "What are we seeing?"
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious how so there must be some sort of telepathy or some sort of mind control thing going on. So that sort of puts the lie to Sybok's.
Well, he could
claim.
be just liberating them and telepathically sharing this with everybody, but and every time you'll notice he insists on privacy. He tells other people to get out, because apparently, if you're in the area, you will experience what this person's pain was.
Okay. One other thing I've mentioned is they say God a lot in the whole movie.
Yes,
including cursing, like taking God's name in vain. McCoy says, "My God, don't do this to me," so on. And I wonder if that was a deliberate choice to use God a lot because of where we're going with this, to meeting God.
I don't know. They've taken the Lord's name in vain, so to speak, in previous movies. I didn't notice them doing it anomalously here. I was watching because I was trying to pretend I don't know where this movie is going. How would I evaluate it without knowing where it's going?
Yep.
And so I was watching for when do we get our first mention of God as a plot element. And we're actually not there yet.
Yeah.
We have this scene with McCoy, then we get to see Spock being born, and baby Spock, who is apparently Vulcan babies are born at a more mature stage than human babies. But he's covered in red blood because of Amanda.
Yep.
And he's then taken before his father, Sarek.
Yep.
And Sarek's only line is, "So human." And so this is Spock's pain.
Yeah.
And then Kirk has this "I need my pain" speech and won't let Sybok do the pain thing to him. And then Sybok is, "Well, you're lost, so come on, Spock and McCoy, let's go find heaven." And this is a moment that was affected by the actors behind the scenes, because as this was originally conceptualized, Spock and McCoy were going to turn sides and go with Sybok. And Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley said absolutely no. These characters would never turn on Kirk in this way, which is certainly they wouldn't, given the kind of anti-anxiety pill that Sybok is giving them.
Right.
But they've been possessed other times, and so I wouldn't buy the idea that never would they turn.
Right.
But not under this. Okay, I buy that. And the original version was they're going to have this falling out, and it's going to be Kirk alone.
Yes.
And so of course it is. But I like this version better, where Spock says to Sybok, "I may be your brother, but you don't know me as well as you think. I'm no longer the lost, abandoned, emotional wreck of a child I was. I found my place in life, and my place is with the captain."
Yep.
And McCoy says, "You better count me out too." And so they stand with him despite the anti-anxiety meds they're on now.
Well, that fits the line earlier before Sybok goes down to do the whole whammying of them with in the lounge there. He says, these three are going to be tough because of the connection that they have with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Their bond of friendship is so strong that they're going to be hard nut to crack.
Right. Sybok does say that. And then only after we've had all that, 30 minutes before the end, God gets mentioned as a plot element for the first time when Sybok says that God is going to be on Shaka-Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he says he received a vision from God who waits for them on the other side. When Kirk says to Sybok, "You're mad," there's this nice little acting moment where Sybok looks unsure for a moment and says, "Am I?" And then he kind of recovers. But that moment where the prophet isn't sure whether he's really a prophet or just a madman with a delusion. So that was actually a decent moment too.
Mm-hmm.
So they make it through the barrier. There's not much to, it's the usual going through a barrier stuff.
They needed to give us some explanation for how they're going through the barrier other than we've conquered fear.
Right.
It's like, this is a fear barrier? Then why didn't any of the probes ever come back? Do android probes have fear?
So they find a planet with this huge energy reading, of course. It's Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Sybok take the shuttle down.
I like at this point, Sybok turns the Enterprise back over to Kirk.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And because now that we've got this mystery here, of course Kirk's going to investigate it, so let the professionals investigate it.
Well, and they make that explicit too, because he touches the little plaque on the wheel in the lounge that says, where no man has gone before.
Right. So now we're going to go.
It's like, oh, now I get to be an explorer. Okay, I can do this.
Head now to Eden, yay, brother.
So they land, step out of the shuttle, and are in awe of Monument Valley in Arizona.
Oh, no. That's the Trona Pinnacles in California.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm just used to seeing mesas in cowboy movies from Monument Valley.
Yeah, well, you can always identify the left and right mitten rocks if it's Monument Valley, but these are the Trona Pinnacles in San Bernardino County.
Okay, that makes more sense.
They didn't have to travel as far for those.
Yes. So the sky darkens when they get to when they do this laborious climb and the usual long walk because you can't land a shuttle near anything. The sky darkens and a sort of stone temple forms out of the ground around them.
It's like Stonehenge, only more like fingers in the air that are kind of semi-closed around our characters.
Yes. A beam of light shoots from the ground and a ponderous voice speaks, brings out a bunch of faces, but settles on the classical old human man with the beard, like our God the Father image.
Pretty awesome beard in this case.
Yes, it is a good beard. This being wants to use the Enterprise to leave the planet, so Kirk asks the logical question, what does God need with a starship? And that's actually the one line everyone remembers.
Yeah, it's the best line in the film.
Yes. What's best is the way he delivers it is, he kind of raises his finger and goes, I have a question.
Yeah.
point of order.
That's kind of funny. My thought when I was watching that's like, oh, hey, we do that. So kind of pull the curtains back a little bit when we want to talk, we kind of hold up our finger to say, I'm next. I
have a question. Yeah. So when Kirk asks for proof that he's God, like, hey, McCoy says, Jim, you don't ask the Almighty for his ID, but why not? And so he gets shot with light beams out of the eyes of the this alien being who apparently does not like people to ask questions.
And this creature, who we're never really given much information about, obviously is not God. And originally it was going to, like, at some point manifest itself with a demonic face. And the idea was going to be, this is the devil. And so even though we've met the devil, that implies that God is real.
Right.
But they didn't end up going with the devil imagery. So we don't have that implication. We just have this creature that is really blowing it as a god, or at least as a Judeo-Christian god. Yeah. Because, he needs a starship, number one, and I also thought it was a dumb line when the God entity is saying, how did you get here? How did you cross the barrier? Right. We came in a starship. It's like, no, duh. You're obviously not native to this planet. Of course you came in a starship. How did you get through that barrier? Which is a question the film doesn't answer for us.
Right.
So this creature needs a starship. It doesn't know who Kirk is.
Yes.
Because who is this puny creature? It's like, don't you know? Aren't you my creator?
Yeah.
And it starts referring to the fact it's been imprisoned here for an eternity. It's like, okay, God has not been imprisoned anywhere for an eternity. Dude, you're blowing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is really, you need to take some more God lessons before you try this again.
Yes, when you imitating God is a tough deal.
Now, I can throw a little bit of a headcanon here, because we talk about, that no probe or ship has come back from the barrier. Headcanon time. This is totally my headcanon.
Okay.
The barrier is actually not that big of a deal. It's just God, quote unquote, this being kept destroying everything it tried to latch onto to get out of this planet.
Right.
And that's why nothing got through. So the barrier wasn't actually a barrier. It was just some like really cool nebula cloud thingy that they had to fly through.
And nothing ever came back. Yeah.
Yep.
But now that God is shooting up the place and using his I-beams to burn everybody, Sybok realizes it's not God, and it must be a deeply hurt individual. And so he decides to do the share your pain thing on it, and leaps into the. First though, the God thing manifests itself as Sybok to Sybok and is like taunting him with his own face. But then Sybok steps into the light and starts doing the heal your pain thing with God, and that causes things to happen.
Right. Well, I'm not sure if Sybok would be successful, because at that point, Kirk calls down a torpedo on their position to blast everything, which apparently kills Sybok, but not the alien. So Sybok is dead.
And just for the one moment in the film where the transporters work, they work, and McCoy and Spock beam up, leaving Kirk alone to face God.
Of course.
Right.
And he's running from God. Now, at this point in the film, Shatner had wanted himself to be chased by like 10 lava monsters, lava men. And there is deleted footage of the one lava man suit or rock man suit that they were able to make.
Yeah.
But it didn't work. And so they cut it out from the film. And that's part of the reason the timing in this final sequence is all wrong. It just goes too fast. It's too choppy. It's not properly developed. They ran out of money, and so they didn't have the money for the scene that Shatner wanted. And so as a result, Shatner is just running from a big glowing face.
Yep.
And then a Klingon bird of prey rises over a hill and shoots God dead. One bolt.
Shoots him in the face.
Yeah. In the face, one bolt. So not the strongest villain we've ever encountered.
Right. And apparently it was Cord gets defangs these Klingons. General Cord calls them on the line because
overawes them.
Yeah, because he's the famous General Cord. I mean, it's just it all wraps up way too quickly. Like it's anticlimactic. Literally, there's no moment of this is what we've all been building for. Oh, it's over. Like it's just there's nothing there.
The timing is wrong. And it turns out that for reasons that are not clear, Mr. Spock was allowed to man the phaser on the Klingon ship.
Yeah.
And so he turns around, and so Mr. Spock with the logic guy killed God. Is that the
logic killed? Yeah.
That's not really the message here. But you have this emotional reunion between Spock and Kirk on the Klingon bridge, and Kirk's about to hug him. And this I thought actually is funny, is Spock says, "Please, Captain, not in front of the Klingons."
That was a good line. So then we have the cocktail party on the ship. I do like the idea of Scotty drinking scotch with the Klingon
Cord.
general.
After he killed a glass of Romulan ale, just downed it.
Yeah.
So and then Kirk and McCoy and Spock have this conversation. Kirk says, "Cosmic thoughts, gentlemen," and McCoy says, "We were speculating. Is God really out there?" And Kirk says, "Maybe he's not out there, Bones. Maybe he's right here in the human heart." I'm like, yeah.
And Spock completely ignores the racist thing there. But actually, I mean, it's not as bad as what I remembered. From having seen it before, I had remembered the line as, "Now we know God is not out there; He's in our hearts," and which would be even more saccharine.
Yep.
But this is not so bad, because here they're just wondering. They're not closed to the idea that God is real. And actually, maybe he's right here. Actually, that resonates with some language from the Bible in the Torah, where Moses is talking about, and God's voice is talking about how God is not distant from you. He's as close as the word in your mouth and things like that.
Okay.
So I was okay with that.
Okay.
It's not as neat as like where you've proved the devil is real and therefore God must be real, but they're being open.
Yeah.
Right. So Spock says, I was thinking of Cybok. I've lost a brother. And Kirk says, yes, I lost a brother once, but I got him back, which is apparently a reference to Spock. But what about Kirk's actual brother that he lost?
Yeah, Sam. I know. That's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because as soon as he said, I lost a brother once, I'm thinking, yeah, in Operation Annihilate, where those horrible flying egg, painful jellyfish things killed him.
Yes.
And then, but I got him back. And it's like, oh, you mean Spock. Well, thanks for dissing your other brother, dude.
Yes, your real brother. Ugh. So anyway, we end up back at Yosemite in the campsite, finishing their vacation, singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat around the campfire with Spock playing the Vulcan lyre. So, and that's how we end. Spock has learned where life is but a dream, apparently. And that's it. So any final thoughts, gentlemen? Father Cory?
Well, our first question is, how on earth did Star Trek VI get greenlit after this? But apparently somehow this made enough money to allow the far more superior movie to be produced.
Yeah, and it was apparently, I mean, Harv Bennett has talked about, we almost killed the franchise with this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we should mention, we've gotten all the way through this without actually mentioning it, but so there was this contractual thing that was the prompt of this movie, which is apparently going back a ways, Leonard Nimoy and Bill Shatner had clauses in their contracts that said if one of us gets some benefit, the other gets the same benefit. It was a way of keeping them at parity so that they would both be on board with things.
Right.
And during the filming of Search for Whales, Leonard Nimoy said to Shatner, I'm directing this. And this was the second film he directed. He directed Search for Spock and Search for Whales. And I'm directing this. You could demand that as a benefit.
To direct the next one. Thanks, Nimoy.
Well, not just did he direct it, he wrote it.
Yes. Well, he had story approval and affected the basic shape of it. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was because of Bill Shatner's contractual clause. He and Nimoy referred to it as their favored nations clauses.
Yes.
And because of that, he got to direct a movie and he got story control and it resulted in all this. And he's owned up to the fact it is not the best of the movies. And others have said it and it almost killed the franchise, but at least we got 6 next, Search for Peace, and so that one actually works. In fact, Search for Peace may be my favorite of the movies.
Yes.
And obviously the odd even rule applies. All the odd ones are not as good, all the even ones are good.
Yeah.
And so it's time after this for a step up.
Yep. And then one other thing, I kind of shake my head, but the toilet that where Kirk sat down and said, "Do not use while in space dock." Of course, this comes from the old trains where it actually, you would use the toilet and the waste would go onto the tracks and it would say, "Do not use in station," because if the train's sitting in the station and you flush, it's going to go into the tracks right there at the station. But why the Enterprise doesn't have apparently a sewage tank or some way to use the replicator system to take care of that waste.
They imply the replicator system uses that stuff later.
but the point is, why would the toilet?
Why is that warning? Yeah.
Why would you not want to use it in space dock if it's not just flushing it out to space?
It's just it's emblematic of all of the ways they just kind of decided to go for jokes instead of.
And that's exactly what it was. It was for those, because that was still. By 1989, pretty much every train, at least you here in the United States, had septic tanks, had storage tanks. But that wasn't that long before that. By the early 80s, there were still trains that dumped. I still remember going on a Boy Scout trip where there was an Amtrak train that it still dumped to the tracks when you used the toilet.
So, yes, the poop jokes for Star Trek.
Yep.
Jimmy, any final comments on this one?
Nope, I think I'm good.
Okay. I will say that at least David Warner gets another chance at a good Star Trek role in Star Trek VI as Gorkon.
Yeah, he was good in this one as just being a really burned out dude.
Yeah, he just didn't get much of that. And of course,
another chance with the There Are Four Lights episode of TNG.
That's right. That's his greatest Star Trek role. And the greatest Klingon in Star Trek is coming up in Star Trek 6, played by, oh my gosh, my brain just wiped. Sound of Music.
Christopher Plummer.
Christopher Plummer, thank you. Best Klingon ever, quoting Shakespeare in the original Klingon, which is great. All right, so let's wrap this up. We've gone on too long talking about this movie. We do want to, before we finish, though, it's very important that we take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including Daniel M., Ann M., Axel L., Kyle J., and Mary S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. What do you think of Star Trek V: The Final Frontier? Are we wrong? Was this your favorite? I'm sure somebody loved this movie, so I want to hear from you if you do. Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Next Generation episode, Where No One Has Gone Before. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, what does God need with a starship?